Welcome to video 3 in our comparison series. Today we're breaking down everything it takes to go from pulling up on site to getting your first drop of ink on the wall. We call it T2P, or time to print. Assembly time is just one piece of the puzzle. T2P captures the full picture, from unloading, leveling, cabling, and calibration. It's every step required to get that first drop of ink on the wall. And it's a more accurate way to evaluate real-world performance, especially when you're trying to estimate how long a job will actually take on site. This is part of our full comparison series between the wallPen and the DXonJet, and you can catch the entire playlist linked in the description below. And while you're there, don't forget to grab our Wall Printer Buyer's Guide. It's packed with the questions you should be asking before you make a purchase. Let's dive in.
All right, we've got our blank white wall and we're ready to measure our time to print, which is going to be how long does it take me from when I show up to the job site till I'm ready to hit print on that final graphic. And a few things go into this. Portability for sure matters. Most of it is going to be in assembly of the machine, and then we're also going to have our final steps, such as nozzle check and calibration, to make sure the final print's going to look good. And these are things we do every time for every job.
Now, let's get to assembling the wallPen.
All right, now an important thing about any vertical printer setup is making sure your track is level. On the wallPen, you're going to do that just by twisting these feet by hand, by bringing them down, or you can use your 6mm Allen key, just like everything else, and adjust the feet that way. I normally do it by hand. It's easier to tell when you get that even pressure, so you're not lifting up all the other feet. But if you needed to lift up one side of the track, the tool would be the best way to do that and do, say, a half turn on all the feet on this side. What we're looking for is just them to stop turning naturally once they get some pressure on the ground. We want to make sure we don't have any feet that are so high up that the track could wobble when extra weight gets put on it. And it's important to do this before we mount the machine. Once the machine's mounted, you'll get a false sense of the foot being securely on the ground just from the weight of the machine. All right, now the base of the wallPen is about 40 pounds, so you do want to make sure that that's an easy thing for you to lift and to set down evenly. That's about the heaviest part of the machine though, I would say, except for some of the bags when they're fully kitted out, but those do have shoulder straps. Now these usually go on pretty easy. You can see there's steel pegs on the vertical extension, so this mounts and it's not going to fall over even when it's not screwed in. Sometimes you may need to wiggle the middle bolt a little bit. That's another accessory we came up with back in the day because we realized it was important. It's just a little insert that goes in there and keeps the bolt straight. Again, another one of those little things that would have been nice if it was added, but not detrimental. All right, one thing to note about transportation and assembly with the wallPen is this printhead is an open system, so if I did tilt this printhead back, all the ink's going to slosh to the back and that's going to pull air into the front. So we want to keep it level. Now air in the front isn't detrimental, but it does mean you'll probably need to purge more, and it's going to take a little bit longer once you start doing your print prep, so it's useful just to keep it level. And then we'll plug in this cable that goes from the shaft to the printhead, and now everything is ready to communicate and the printer assembly is done.
Now that we've walked through the wallPen assembly process and what setup looks like in the field, we're diving into the DXonJet to show how its design, components, and build approach compare. Whether you're leaning one way or still weighing your options, seeing both side by side will help everybody choose what's best for their workflow.
Some people leave the machine assembled to this level, which is a lot of the assembly process, and you could totally do that. You just may need something like at least a large minivan, if not a Sprinter van, and some form of custom foam padding, something so that when you lay this on its side, you're not going to have these geared tooth rails or the dovetail, anything that could be fundamentally important to the machine moving and needs to stay pristine up against a metal surface. You wouldn't want that shaking or scraping as you're driving. But if you could accomplish that, or if you already have a Sprinter van, that actually takes out a lot of the time for assembly, which is one of the only drawbacks of this machine. When you're mounting the printhead with the DXonJet, you do have to pick the printhead up and then screw in these bolts. However, they've added a nice little feature to it, which is this metal bar that you see next to my index finger here, and that'll rest nicely on here. And actually, everything stays really well. It just takes one hand to kind of keep it stable, and then you can find where your bolt holes are and get those bolts screwed in.
Assembly is just the beginning. Before you hit print, there's a critical phase we call T2P. From surface checks to image setup, This stage sets the tone for everything that follows. Let's break down what proper print prep looks like and how it can make or break your final result.
Now, print prep is going to be a necessary part of any project. It differs a little between machines, but our ultimate goal is make sure we get any air that's in the ink lines out. And that's so we don't have any interruptions in color, and most of this air happens right at the face of the heads, so purging is what is necessary to get rid of that. Now, both of these machines do that a little bit differently. In the wallPen, we have a manual process where we press down on the bags, and we hold a cloth underneath the head to collect that ink, and then dispose of that cloth later with some gloves on. This can be a little bit messy, and it takes a little bit of skill. So we'll notice operators feeling a little more uncomfortable with that process until a few months down the line when they've practiced it many times and have a feel for what kind of purge results in what kind of nozzle check, as far as how much pressure they're putting on, etc. With the DXonJet, it's an automated process, which is nice. So there's a print head cover actually mounted to the front that draws ink out of the print head and then disposes it into the little bottle on the side. And so that keeps your hands clean, which is nice. It's also nice that it's entirely automated, that you press buttons on the machine. There's no pressing on the bags. There's no wondering if you're going to burst a bag if you press too hard. There's a few things that feel lacking in that area for the wallPen, but it does work and people pick it up. It just takes some time. You're pretty much guaranteed to get some bit of air in the lines, at least in the front of the heads, in transporting the machine. You're traveling over bumpy roads, you may even hit some potholes, and that's not going to be detrimental to the mechanics of the machine, but it is going to introduce air, and that's why purging is absolutely necessary. And that goes for all printers, not just wall printers, but we're much more mobile with these, and so it's a more regular occurrence with wall printers. After training over 60 operators, we've seen a lot of this. People will go to a job site, and whether it's because they feel pressured by the client to print quicker and they kind of fall into that trap, or if it's just they forgot to, we'll get sent a picture and clearly it's missing magenta. There's no magenta showing up and the color doesn't look right. And they'll ask, what happened here? And we'll say, where's your nozzle check? Show me a picture so I know what's going on. And they'll say, I didn't print one because I forgot to purge. I forgot to do a nozzle check. And you have to remember, this is a very permanent process. So what we're putting on the wall is there to stay. And it's not like we can go back and change it without having to repaint and reprint the wall. So when we press print, we want to make sure everything's good to go, guaranteed. And that's why it's so important to purge and do your nozzle check before you print. Now, another step in print prep that's a little different between the two machines is how you do that nozzle check and see if everything's firing correctly. Just to make it simple, for the wallPen, we normally put some vinyl on the wall and then we print our calibration file, which has a nozzle check at the top. And what I mean by nozzle check is just solid blocks of color, and it shows us what every nozzle in the machine is doing. If you notice gaps in those blocks of color, that's some air, and you just purge it out. With the DXonJet, we simply hold a piece of paper in front of the print head and then click a button, and it'll run up and do a nozzle check on that piece of paper. A major difference between these two machines is the need for calibration. We don't need to calibrate the DXonJet for the most part. That's more of a factory calibration setting, but because it's one single print head, the location of each color is set. They're all locked together. Whereas on the wallPen, we're using a different print head for every color, and so even some jostling can move those around by fractions of a millimeter, which is enough to need some recalibrating. It's pretty easy to do, but we do need to do that before we print every time, and sometimes make some minor adjustments if you've been traveling. So as you can see, print prep is necessary for both of these machines. It's just going to be a little bit of a different process. Personally, we're a huge fan of how the DXonJet does it automatically. We don't have to put on gloves and take them off consistently if we're purging and then putting up vinyl and then purging and printing again. And that's a big win.
All right, that's everything you need to know about assembly and time to print. If you're comparing machines, this is the kind of real-world metric that separates good marketing from real efficiency. If you haven't already, grab our Wall Printer Buyer's Guide. The link's in the description, and it's one of the most valuable tools we've put together for anyone thinking about getting into this space. And if you're new to the Wall Print Academy, we're here to help you avoid the mistakes we made and fast-track your success with real operator insights, proven tools, and ongoing support. Ready to keep going? Check out the video here where we break down printer transportation, how these machines move, pack, and travel from job to job. We'll see you there.